Welcome back to another episode of the Integrated Podcast. I'm excited to be joined today by Matt Marum, Director of ISV Alliances at SugarCRM, a unified CRM platform that centralizes marketing, sales, and customer service teams. Thanks for joining us, Matt.
Thank you for having me, Brian.
Yeah, well, why don't we start with getting you to share a little bit about your experience. You've gone through the gamut of different roles at SugarCRM, from engineering, product management, and even developer advocacy.
Thank you for that question. I've started my career at Sugar. My background is definitely technical. I love even before I joined Sugar. At IBM, my focus was on software standards and sort of interoperability, which kind of opened the world of integrations to me. When I joined Sugar, it was sort of an exciting time. We were launching a new platform, so I got to work on Sugar 7, which was sort of a replatforming of our product. And during my time at Sugar, I've seen a lot of transition of the company, and as you mentioned, I've had an opportunity to hold a bunch of different roles. I've always kind of gravitated towards being a little more outbound, I guess. A lot of engineers, they just want to sit in their ivory tower, sling some code. I like to do that sometimes, but I also like chatting with people like Brian here, especially talk about technology and building cool stuff. So, and that's kind of, I think, drew me to take on some different roles. Like I was a solution architect at our OEM program at Sugar, where we're helping companies that wanted to license some CRM or CX technology to use in their products. I was helping guide them through that process and make them successful. I did that for a little bit, and then just given my background and starting to work a lot with our partner community, I started doing developer relations at Sugar, developer advocacy, which is a program that I sort of created at Sugar. Sugar had gone through this transition of being sort of the open source CRM, and we had sort of a very vibrant kind of developer community that kind of came out of that. Open source tends to draw a lot of interest from developers for obvious reasons, and the role part of it used to be like we have community managers that help sort of manage just the forums or interactions with the community. I think as the way I saw it, and part of the reason when I like the term developer advocate is because advocacy is sort of two-way street, especially at a platform company. You're advocating obviously for your platform and why it's great to build on out to the sort of outside community of developers. But what was really critical for me and what was important for me was being able to advocate internally, right? Like for the needs of our developer community and making sure that, APIs are getting built that are needed and that we're taking care to properly version things and roll out technical changes that would impact our platform and people building on our platform. I spent some time being an advocate and, telling the product management team what they should be doing with our APIs and platform. And then I got the job. So I started doing a little bit of product management within the platform team. And I did that for a while. And then, in my current role, I work with sort of an expansion. I sort of almost like a natural expansion, at least in my mind, of my work with the developer community is starting to engage with the technology partners. So I was already kind of responsible for making sure that the partners could build their solutions successfully. Now I help them go to market with those solutions. So that's kind of how I landed here. And I guess a little bit of the story of how Sugar's evolved a little bit too.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, that definitely sounds like the perfect set of experiences to set you up for success in your current role, because you understand the developers' needs from both internally and externally. And then also you have the vision of, okay, what do we prioritize from a product roadmap perspective as well? So I think that, it's like the ideal path, because oftentimes, you see people getting into similar partnerships roles or alliance roles, and everyone takes a very different path. But I think what you've taken has naturally just made a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think it has. I mean, I'd say a lot of people in partnership roles comes from a sales background,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that it's that go to market skill set that I think is also super valuable. But yeah, I definitely I found working with my colleagues, and even when I engaged with my colleagues at SugarCRM and when I engaged with other partner professionals, there's usually sort of two tracks to a successful technology partnership, ISV partnership. There's that technology track, and then there's sort of the go to market piece, right? Because like you can, there's a sense sometimes you can, what do they call it? Sell it, sell it, build it, or I got a my colleague Tom has a great phrase for it. But basically, you sell it and then you build it,
Yeah.
and then your engineering team freaks out, or whoever's responsible, which that's your go to market getting ahead of your technology capabilities. But I think with my background, I've been able to like keep our technology capabilities kind of in lockstep with what we can take to market. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
It's all about matching that timing, right? Your product and your
Yeah,
go to
yeah,
market.
yeah,
It's just
yeah. Ideally, you want it all land, or at least it's feasible, right? Like, I
right.
definitely do maybe a little bit of a PowerPoint sort of design, right, for an integration, but at least it's backed by like, yes, there's some experience and knowledge here that yes, this is achievable and it's within a scope that everybody can live with. So.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. So I wanted to dig into one of the features, or I guess product lines that SugarCRM has built out, which is the Sugar Integrate. Really curious. So
Mm-hmm.
we talked earlier about this transition from the platform being tailored towards third-party developers to build integrations on top of Sugar, but now you're kind of in-housing that and leveraging it as a tool for your services team. Would love to just hear a bit more about that experience, the strategic shift, I guess you could call it, and yeah, what led
Mm-hmm.
to the current iteration of the feature.
Yeah, I think you know, I think when you're building, well, I'd say part of it is kind of a marketplace statement, right? Like Sugar is a CRM platform. Um, the typical buyer of a CRM isn't necessarily, it's a VP of sales, VP of marketing, CMO. Um, they care about integrations. They just don't really care about how it works, what goes into the sausage making. They know it's important. They know that it's critical that account master data flows into the CRM or vice versa, or your marketing automation. The leads are getting pumped in the CRM, so your sales reps are able to sell, right? But some of the mechanics and the details, they don't really care. And I think so. So from a go-to-market perspective, I think what we found was that most of buyers of sugar, they were looking for an app that's essentially in a marketplace, right? Something that's already pre-built, it's already been vetted, and it's ready. It's ready for prime time and ready to just lock and load with it. And so when we first launched Sugar Integrate, we were focused on I guess solving a slightly different challenge. Like we've kind of grown our product and platform portfolio such that we have a bunch of different solutions. We used to be just kind of a one solution company, and now we got Sugar Market, we got Sugar Sell, Sugar Serve, and Discover, and et cetera. And so you got all these different platforms, and now you've got sort of a different integration problem, right? Like if I want to build a component that talks to all these different platforms, I'm no longer dealing with one API, I'm dealing with multiple APIs. So like Integrate was sort of an iPaaS solution that made it easier for folks to build those integrations, but it's really kind of targeted at developers, and kind of marketed like kind of almost like a traditional iPaaS where you pay for the connector. What we ended up transitioning to was I think something that it was basically people want a marketplace where they just say I want to buy the integration between Sugar and X. I want to buy the integration between Sugar and NetSuite or ERP, and that was the model that we've ended up moving towards, is having pre-built integrations, this sort of library that our services team has kind of designed. And that's sort of kind of a work in progress. It's sort of continual work in progress. There's millions of apps out there, so you're always building more and more apps. And so that's kind of how that strategy sort of shifted.
Yeah, so would love to. I mean, because you're in-housing, it's a lot of work. Like you said, there's so many SaaS tools out there. How are you prioritizing which integrations to go after, and how are you thinking strategically about the monetization aspect? Since it sounds like, if I understand it correctly, now it's the SugarCRM users are the ones paying for those integrations.
Correct. I think the prioritization. We've always been coming out of open source, we've always had a really vibrant developer community. We've had lots and lots of partners, like channel partners, ISV partners, OEM partners. And so when it comes to prioritizations, a lot of times there's sort of, I would call, kind of core ubiquitous use cases that our product team tackles, like email, right? We have a product called SugarConnect. That is an integration product that is probably doesn't say that on the website, but it's an integration because it integrates your CRM with Outlook or Office 365 and Gmail, because email is such a critical integration point for anybody selling today, period, right? So it's totally ubiquitous. And so that's like the kind of, and mobile, right? I know, it's hard to think of it, but I guess mobile was sort of a new sort of app and area that is ubiquitous that it was new, when we were first started, but it was sort of a new area, it was ubiquitous that, we needed, a product team needed to own that. What we find, channel partners, they often were taking on some of these other sort of secondary needs. Like, hey, like a key critical ERP in France, right? Well, we got local channel partners that can build that integration and go to market with that. So when we look at prioritizing sort of what we do and kind of that integrate catalog, we're always balancing what we know is out there already in the marketplace that our partners have built, our ISVs have already built, and we're looking for gaps, right? And of course, we're also looking at sort of and usually those gaps that we're trying to identify, they're usually driven through sales discovery, right? So a lot of it's our sales team, particularly our solution consultants, keeping track of what are the integration needs that are coming up, and then tracking that in our internal CRM, Sugar Internal. and so we report on that data as sort of a key point for how we prioritize what's the next sort of integration template that our internal sort of services team works on.
Yeah, really interesting, because I mean, as you go broader with your integrations, for example, email, I assume, most of the email integrations operate very similarly. But as you start going broader into maybe different verticals, serving slightly different end users with those integrations, has it been a challenge to understand how to design the integration? I know you mentioned like designing on PowerPoint as like an example to show the user story perhaps, but yeah, how do you go about equipping your teams with the knowledge they need to design like the optimal workflow, let's say, for an integration in a different space?
Yeah, I think what we found is, I'd say there's broad categories, right? Like let's call the two main ones out in CRM. There's sort of CRM integration with an ERP system, your core financials or your, quoting system or whatever, and then marketing automation, right? Like you got a system that is generating leads or visitors to your website, people filling out contact forms. How does that flow into your CRM? And like you can draw some, pretty. You can define those use cases at a pretty high level. Generally, these are how like you can sketch out a process of like, this is how ERP integration works. This is how marketing automation works. Where the gap is like, of course, when you get into the details, right? Because what makes this particular, there's subject matter expertise in that system, right? You got to know a little bit about how its APIs work, what's actually possible, right? There might be some limitations that you need to address. There might be some ins and outs. There might be a certain strength, right, that allows this particular CPQ tool to stand out from its other from its competitors, that differentiator. And so you need to build the integration to the strength, right? And I think so it can be hard to cookie cutter some of these integrations unless you have some of that subject matter expertise in the technology. And then if you just like a good sense of what their ICP is, like what's the customers they go after, or what deals they win. So what we found, is that our more successful sort of integrations is when we've established some sort of partnership, and we have a partner that's willing to engage us and work together for common benefit. So. I think that's key. That's one of the traps, right? Is just not having the right subject matter expertise. You might have some technology. Hey, they got an API. I know how to use APIs. We can, you get going, and then you can run into all kinds of problems because you don't realize how people really want to use the system or what their customers are really trying to do with the system, and so on.
Yeah, that's something we've seen. We can provide this integration platform, but ultimately, if you just tell your developers to go read the docs and figure it out, it's not going to create the best experience for the customer, right? Especially because like even just looking at HubSpot and Salesforce is so much more customizable. And how do you build for that versus a platform that's a little more, I guess, cookie cutter, like you said, it's a challenge. Yeah. So how do you go about finding those subject matter experts? Is it within, you have such a broad community. Is it just tapping into that or?
Yeah. So again, I guess we are fortunate with a pretty good community. We have different partners, again, channel partners. Some of them might have some expertise in a system, so we'll go talk to them. And in some cases, we might get them to build the integration, right? And a lot of times, I'll engage directly, or we'll engage directly with the ISV, see if there's an opportunity for us to work together. And I think that's always sort of a sorting factor, right? You can go out and say, I work for SugarCRM. Obviously, the CRM market has a couple of bigger players. The Salesforces, the HubSpots of the world. It can be really hard for folks that want to partner with those guys to actually stand out. And I think you can find willing partners that want to go out there and win together. So part is just finding the right fit, like who's willing to work with us, and if we can work together, again, supporting each other on sort of the technical needs, like how do we build out this integration together, and on the go-to-market needs, right? So that we're both aligned.
Yeah, definitely finding partners that are similar stages with you makes it a lot easier to have this conversation.
Similar stage, or just like the right ICP, like they're going after the same customers you're going after.
And have you used integrations as a way to, let's say, tap into new markets? For example, if let's say you want to move more up market or downstream into SMBs, have you used integrations as a way to tap into those markets?
Yeah, I'd say yes. Part of it is, I'd say in my experience, it has been a bit of like a trailing indicator a little bit, because you're not always sure. So like okay, at Sugar, we believe we got the best solution for mid-market companies, and so in particular, like manufacturing, financial services, the other technology, whatever. And I think as we've done customer marketing to those deals, that's when our solution consultants get involved in certain needs pop up, right? And like in kind of the ERP space, right? Everybody knows or heard of SAP, right? But and SAP likes to talk about SAP S/4HANA and kind of their enterprise ERP solutions. But the SAP B1, that comes up in deals all the time, right? And especially in our deals, right? For mid-market customers, right? Epicor is another sort of ERP vendor that, like, they're not necessarily top tier. At least they don't go after big enterprises, but they kind of fit into our ICP, and they're showing up in deals, and that drives a lot of behavior. In order to win a deal or close a deal next quarter, and we've got 2 or 3 other opportunities lined up behind it. That drives our behavior, and that helps solve some of the prioritization for us.
If there's a deal waiting,
to get a deal done. Yeah, I have a deal waiting. That solves all the problems. Yeah, that's why you sometimes start in PowerPoint and then you wait for a deal.
Okay, awesome. Just take a step back then. You mentioned that since the beginning, Sugar's been a platform, and I think you've emphasized that so far. A lot of companies nowadays start off as point solutions, right? But they eventually want to become like a Sugar CRM or have that ecosystem, that platform that developers and other SaaS companies want to build on or build upon.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any advice on how companies can potentially make that transition, and also just shed some light on how the open source roots, obviously enabled or accelerated that process of, positioning Sugar
Yeah.
as a platform?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, so I guess let me start with advice, because I think, like, if I talk about open source, I got to tell you, well, you got to open source your product, and that might send some people back to the drawing board. So because if they didn't start that way, then but I do, but yeah, like if you've got a point solution and you're trying to grow it, I would say if you build an API, it is not true that if you build an API, they will come. Just having an API isn't good enough. I think what I've discovered, and what an open source kind of creates for you, is like what you need is like great apps and examples and stuff that people can steal, not steal, copy and paste or borrow. Great idea. They got it. You got to have like some cool assets that will drive some sort of interest from developers, from people that want to build on your integration. So like, yeah, if you're building an API, I would say, focus on, actionable value driving use cases, making sure your API actually supports that. And for me, there's three sort of categories. There's sort of, you need to be able to support data integration. So being able to like pull data in and out of the system, sort of, do any of that data management. So that's like one whole category. Then there's sort of process automation, being able to support automating a business process. It might touch on multiple different systems. Like if somebody's using your tool, whatever critical business process your tool is designed to fulfill, you should be thinking about how that could be projected out into a different system, right? And then finally, I think there's a UI integration piece that's critical that you should think about. Like, how do I? And UI integration isn't just like, UI integration is about, I want to create a seamless experience in like one pane of glass, one kind of view, and I want to be able to see everything, all my data together in one place, even if it isn't actually collected in one place, right? From a data integration perspective. And I'll tell you, all three of those use cases, they can be supported by REST APIs, but they're not exclusively. Like if you just have a REST API, that's not good enough. Like a UI integration, a lot of times that's like iframes or JavaScript SDKs or something like that. Process automation is often supported through like webhooks or technology like that. And then data integration, like CSVs are great. They, being able to support generating like flat files and stuff like that. That there's a lot of integrations, enterprise integrations that just run on CSVs. So I think it's just, it's helpful to think about it, and in terms of what are the problems you're trying to solve, and making sure, I think a good platform touches on all three of those. And I think you'll see that if you go out and survey platforms, that they have solutions for all three of those. Now, open source, I think obviously with Sugar, you create an open source community. You got like this great, you almost don't need an API, because like the code itself is just malleable. You can go in and just change it and do amazing things with it. You don't even need an API. Somebody will build an API, might commit it back to you. And I think that was obviously really key for us, especially I think driving a lot of name awareness of Sugar and interest and excitement, especially in the early days. I think over time it was something that didn't support the needs of the business at, once you hit a certain point of growth. Because you've got a successful open source project. What happens to every successful open source project? It gets forked. And then you got competitors that you're using your own IP against you. Of course, it's supposed to be shared, it's open, but anyway, that you get into the sort of the whole open source arguments right there. And then open source has this perspective of free. It should just be free. Why would I pay for this? even though I drive a lot of value. And I think open source generally, it resonates strongly with like an IT audience, but not so much for anybody else. And so I think that was part of the reason why we hit sort of I think a point in maturity and growth in the company. We sort of took a step back from, like, let's say, the open core model, right? We found, but we still have open source projects like around our product. Like for the dev community, we have like open source tools and things that we still promote. It's just it's taken on a kind of a new form.
Mm-hmm. So what I take from this is that, like, for a lot of companies that aren't open source, don't necessarily try to turn your product into an open source project, but maybe at the onset build integrations yourself as examples of what apps could look like and how apps should interact with your platform, and then use that as kind of an incentive.
Yeah, an exemplar app, like that was something actually project I worked on at Sugar. My team worked on it. It was building out, like an exemplar app that shows like these are all the best practices of extending our platform, and build it in a way that people can borrow it so that they can use it in their own CRM projects or in their own add-ons. And I think, building something useful and interesting, like that gets everybody's attention, at least, especially from a developer audience. Show me something cool, show me something interesting, let me play with it. It goes beyond the API. I'd say the other, I was just going to say the other important thing when you're building out these APIs, and like it was a challenge with the open source model, was that how do you support customizations in an upgrade safe way? Because if you have if you allow people to come in and just like change stuff in your source code, you can never upgrade them to the next version. So I think open source as a model, you have to figure out what's your extension model and make sure you nail that, and nail upgrade safety. And that's been a focus area for us as we've evolved our platform because of our open source roots. It's like making sure our extension model is solid and making sure we're upgrade safe, because we give people enough rope to hang themselves, we like to say, right? Because of the extensibility and the flexibility of our platform. But, you have to have some discipline when you're working on it.
Mm-hmm. So as you shifted towards a lot more in-house building, let's say with the services team, has this getting the resources been a lot tougher, since now it's much heavier load on your internal development resources?
I think everybody has limitations of budgets and things like that. I think part of the idea with the model that where we with Sugar Integrate, in our services team building integrations, by leveraging an iPaaS, we're able to build those integrations faster.
Mm-hmm.
And I think and be able to build them in a way that's more easily maintained over time, and more reusable. So I think that's part of kind of the idea is we have to make sure that we're able to building it from scratch. Like I think if you're looking at a platform or something like that, like there has to be a comparison of building it from scratch
Mm-hmm.
and leveraging a platform. And I think at least at Sugar, we kind of recognize that building it from scratch was going to take too darn long. And so building integrations from scratch, especially when so much of integration can be kind of a little bit boilerplate, there's a lot of patterns and things that you need to reuse between different projects. I think where we always run into the problem, and I'm sure a lot of companies, there's just too many dang apps out there. You can't build them all. So I think there's always you're always going to be resource constrained. You're always going to be in a place where you're saying no more than you're saying yes. And so that's why, it's important to make good decisions about what you do build. There's just too many apps out there that people want to integrate. So part of the idea is that, when we approach a customer project, it's like, we want to focus on the critical integrations first. Let's get the 1 or 2 or 3 first, instead of just doing the 11 or 20 and, the laundry list of things they want to see connected. Mm-hmm. Let's break it out into phases and make sure you're seeing value on those first couple of integrations, the ones we know are really important. So.
Yeah, because you'll never be able to build them all, right? They're always going to have
No,
more
no, and people
requests.
don't even use them. You can build a
Yeah.
bunch. Like people ask for 7 integration, but people change their apps. Like they say, oh, we were using this app, and not anymore. 6 months later they don't renew it, and you know, it was a waste of time for everybody. So yeah,
Cool. Awesome. Well, as we wrap up, what are you most excited for? Looking forward for Sugar CRM and some of the work you're doing.
yeah. Well, my new project and baby is this nice new marketplace platform we just acquired. So as I mentioned earlier, Sugar's got some great open source roots. We have a great developer community, and we had a couple of enterprise and developers that built a pretty cool Sugar add-on marketplace called Sugar Outfitters, and they've been active in our community for quite some time. And we recently acquired that marketplace, so I'm kind of helping take it over. And yeah, we've got big plans for really expanding. Our kind of marketplace strategy, let's say. We had sort of an existing Sugar Exchange, which was more of a listing service, and I think what we bought is it's awesome. It was custom built just for selling Sugar add-ons, and so it's pretty cool, and I'm excited to launch that and grow that ecosystem of apps that we can sell on that platform, and be able to support all our developer community and our partners, and sell into our customers.
Awesome. So for our listeners, I'll drop a link below so you can check it out. Take a look at the new Sugar Outfitters. Really excited to see how that turns out.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and for listeners who are maybe earlier stage B2B SaaS companies, product teams and engineering teams, do you have what would be the one piece of advice you'd leave for them if they're earlier on in their journeys?
Yeah, I'd say, I guess if you're building an API, please version it. go ahead and think through some of some of that hard stuff early, and build some discipline around that. Because I'll tell you, like this one pains me sometimes, is like some of our old APIs or extension points. Getting rid of an old API, it's impossible, guys. So so you need to be thinking carefully about versioning. Every decision you think is a good decision today, you might change your mind about it later. So I think that's one piece of advice for anybody out there. I think if you're building integrations, again, my comments earlier about subject matter expertise, I think don't neglect like doing a little research and having like a product manager or somebody really go try and learn that ecosystem. Reach out and talk to somebody, or find somebody that really uses that app and understand how they want to use it. Don't just read the API docs and make assumptions. I think you'll go a long way there. Anyway, that'd be my two quick pieces of advice there.
Awesome. And if people want to reach out to you or follow, some of the work that you're doing, how can they find you?
Sure. Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me, Matt Marum, on LinkedIn. Not that active on Twitter, but we do have a developer Twitter, SugarCRM Dev. Yeah, you can come find me on Sugar Outfitters. There's a website chat. You can message me. I'll be monitoring. All right.
Well, thanks so much for your time today. You shared a lot of valuable insight, and I clearly learned a lot. So looking forward to staying connected, and I'm sure our listeners are going to really enjoy some of the stuff that you shared today. Thanks, Matt.
All right. Well, thank you, Brian. I had fun talking to you about technology and all that. I love this stuff. So good talking to you.